this has always been a bit of a weird one for me. It's the one I've had the most unique, memorable, I guess you want to call it, experience. Because it was my first time walking into an MCU movie and not having a single clue who the character was or what it was even about. Yeah, I kid you not. Like, this was my first time, back when it first came out. It was my first time going into an MCU movie without any prior knowledge. I knew about Iron Man, I knew about Captain America, I even knew about Guardians of the Galaxy because I did a little bit of research beforehand. But Doctor Strange, for whatever reason, I just didn't do that. I don't know if it was a shortage on time because I was still in high school when this came out, I believe. Or for any other reasons, but yeah, for whatever reason, this was as blind of a first watch as it gets. Like, I saw the announcement, I saw the trailer, knew nothing, but knew it was a Marvel movie, so it had to be quality. Because back then, I wasn't as analytical as I am now. So, because of that, my viewing experience with this one was weird. When I first watched it, I had no clue what to make of it. It was by no means a bad movie. It's not. It is not bad. But trying to figure out what to make of it without being unfamiliar with the source material, yeah, that's a rabbit hole you don't want to jump down. So, prepare yourself for what might be the longest out of all these reviews, because it's the one that has the most interesting story attached to it. So, strap yourselves in. This is going to be a long one. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mr. Station, research of everything animation, including Marvel heroes assembling for the fate of the world, as well as TV and movies. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Welcome back to Marvelous May. Welcome to my review of Doctor Strange, the first step of the MCU into the magical, mythical realm. Like, yeah, we kind of had that in the Thor movies, but it still felt, more mythical than magical. This one's all about magic. And that is definitely a weird thing, after having 2 full phases of the MCU, where magic pretty much wasn't involved. So this was new territory for Marvel, not to mention a lot of people, when this was first announced, were like, how the heck are they even going to make that work? Because it was one of those movies that people thought would be unadaptable. It's one of those comic books that people thought would never work as a movie. At least from my research, after watching it. So, there's a lot of ups with this movie, there's a lot of downs with this movie, and there's a very strange experience to talk about with this movie. So, this is going to be probably my longest review out of everything in this Marvelous May, because it's the one that has the biggest story attached to it. So, without further ado or delay, I'm going to stop yapping and get straight into the script. Here is my very long and detailed written review for my first time experience of, and overall experience of now, with Doctor Strange. This has always been a bit odd. It's not bad or anything like that, but more so because when it first came out, it was my first time watching an MCU movie about a character that I literally knew nothing about. I became familiar with Guardians and Iron Man before watching the movies, from reading some comics beforehand, as both a fun pastime, and especially in the case of Guardians, research to become familiar with characters. Because I really liked the trailer for Guardians when I saw it, and I was interested to know more, so I did a little research. And it kind of just went on from there. Please excuse my guinea pig, he's being a bit weird today. I literally had zero clue that Doctor Strange was even a comic book character at all until the movie was announced, so back in 2016 when it first came out, it was pretty much a completely new experience for me. Not helping this bizarre, blind first experience was that I was unfamiliar with Benedict Cumberbatch as an actor because, outside of Wallace and Gromit, Bob the Builder, and the original Thomas the Tank Engine, stop-motion animation, I didn't really watch much British-produced media growing up. It wasn't until around 2018-2019 when I started getting more invested in that side of film and television, mainly because of Cumberbatch being chosen to voice Illumination's version of the Grinch 2 years after this movie came out. After that, I kind of jumped down the rabbit hole. Ever since I've watched Blackadder, I've watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I have watched Mr. Bean, the original live-action Mr. Bean. I have watched a ton more British stuff after that. So now I'm more familiar with it, but back then it was like a completely new experience for me. Heck, it wasn't until recently I knew about arguably his most well-known role outside of the MCU, and his longest-running role outside of the MCU. That being Sherlock Holmes in the Sherlock TV series. And that's because my girlfriend, AziraphaleAngel, as you guys know her by, is a huge fan of that show and Cumberbatch in general. I literally got her a Funko Pop of Doctor Strange not that long ago because she's such a huge fan of Benedict Cumberbatch. So, naturally, on first watch, I wasn't entirely sure what to make of it. I by no means hated it, but I was left more confused than entertained. Adding to this weirdness was that it was the first film of the entire MCU to be nominated for a flipping Academy Award. Yes, out of all the MCU movies, this was the first one to get Academy recognition. Specifically for its visual effects, which for whatever stupid reason lost to the snooze-inducing Jungle Book remake. That just screams rigged to me. As well as winning 2 of its 10 nominations at the Saturn Awards for Best Comic to Film Motion Picture and Best Supporting Actress for Tilda Swinton, who plays the Ancient One in this movie. What's even weirder, though, is that actual opinion on this film, despite all its accolades, is still mixed. With some praising it, especially because of the visuals, rightfully so, we'll talk about them, the visuals in this movie are amazing, and others finding it boring in most spots. There are some people out there that really don't like this movie. Now, having rewatched it for the first time in years, I can say definitively that I think it's solid. It's good. It is a good movie, and it is a solid origin story for Doctor Strange. It's a decent origin story for such a strange character who now, thanks to Cumberbatch, has made him a mainstay in the MCU. Because after this movie, he would appear several more times in several other movies, including, but not limited to, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man No Way Home, and I think that's it. I don't think he's in Thunderbolts, if I remember correctly, but yeah. And of course his own sequel, Multiverse of Madness, which I will be re-reviewing on this channel, because that review was stuck on the last channel. But yeah, without Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange would still be as niche of a comic book character as you can get. But because his performance was so good, and because he kept reappearing so many times in the MCU, especially through this third phase of the Infinity Saga, he's become a mainstay character, and has now gotten a lot more popular since then. So, starting with the pros. The acting in this movie is really good, especially Cumberbatch, who owns every single scene he's in with class and conviction. Cumberbatch was the best actor they could have gotten for this role. He has that British clash and conviction that you expect from, British actors. And despite being British, not only does he do a surprisingly decent American accent, but he also does a great job at capturing the character as he goes through all these changes to become the Sorcerer Supreme. Because, again, this is an origin story. So, amazing job to Cumberbatch. Seriously, there's a reason why he's a mainstay now. Story, while on the basic side, is well told. The story is really basic, and that is a flaw, which we'll talk about later, but it is well told. It's by no means a bad origin story, it's just very by the numbers. Like, you can expect everything that's going to happen. The action is pretty flipping cool, with how it literally bends reality itself. Yeah, that's the one thing this movie has going for it, is its action and its effects. The action in this movie is unlike any other Marvel movie that we've gotten up to that point, because this one literally bends around reality itself. So you have characters on ceilings, you have characters, like, running up sides of buildings that are hanging sideways like this. You have buildings like collapsing in on each other to form like this weird dystopian circle of things. Like, it's pretty cool, and they definitely take advantage of that in a very impressive way. And those effects are absolutely incredible, even today, with how it visualizes said reality bending. Now that I've watched it as a full-grown adult with an actual analytical mindset, I can easily see why this movie got nominated for an Academy Award for its visuals. Because its visuals are freaking stunning. They are unlike anything you will see in the MCU up to this point. It is genuinely impressive and some of the best CGI that you are ever going to see in the entire MCU. I know that sounds like high praise, and maybe I'm overrating it a little, but seriously, the visuals in this movie are fantastic. And unlike the crappy Avatar movies, they actually have substance on top of those pretty visuals. Just saying. Directing by Scott Derrickson, who previously only had the first Sinister movie to his name, and one of the really, really bad Hellraiser sequels, is genuinely impressive. Like, I can see why Marvel went with a horror director on this one, because the thing about horror directors is that they are very good at setting up suspense and getting really off the wall with their visualization of certain ideas. That's one of the reasons why I love horror, because you get so many different flavors, so to speak, of a horror movie depending on who's making it. Most of the time, you do have those run-of-the-mill pieces of garbage, but basically, what makes horror great is that there's many different flavors to it depending on whoever's making it. That's the great thing about horror, and that does work well here with Doctor Strange, even though in this movie there isn't really much horror to it. Like, this movie's not going to scare your kids or anything, but it does have a few creepy moments here and there. So, yeah, you can tell it's from a horror director, but that's by no means a bad thing. And this is definitely the best thing that he has attached his name to. The quirky MCU humor is still pretty funny. Doctor Strange is almost as good as Iron Man when it comes to goofy, quippy one-liners. And he is ridiculously funny here. Heck, even the Stan Lee cameo, even though it's another blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment, is also pretty funny, because you have Doctor Strange and this other guy fighting, and they end up falling sideways onto this bus, and you have Stan Lee just sitting there on the bus reading the newspaper. It's funny. It's not his funniest cameo, but it's funny. The pacing is relatively consistent. It's a slow burn, like most origin stories, but it's not to the point of being boring. Yes, there is a difference. And the runtime is surprisingly under 2 hours, making it one of the shortest movies in the MCU. This movie's under 2 hours. Like, that is pretty crazy to think about, especially considering the fact that this came out in 2016, where it was starting to become a trend to make movies 2 to 2.5 hours long. And in the case of the 2020s decade, 2.5 to 3 hours long. However, there's still a few glaring flaws here. The story is really basic. Like I said, you're going to be able to see every single beat of the story coming from a mile away, because it's very much by the numbers and follows the usual template you see with most origin story movies, comic book or otherwise. The plot is beyond predictable. Like, there's not really much surprises here. You're going to pretty much see every single thing coming from a mile away, and that can harm your experience to an extent. And, yet again, I warned you I was going to say it a lot this month, but I gotta say it again. The villain is really freaking boring, as he lacks any actual character whatsoever. Like, the villain in this movie sucks. He's not the worst one, but he sucks. I don't even remember his name. He just sucks. He's stupid, he's boring, and he sucks. Also, it's not really a negative per se, but the final act with Dormammu feels a bit like unnecessary padding. Sure, they talk about him a little bit in one scene, but that doesn't mean we have to justify giving a whole 5 to 10 minutes at the very end of the movie just to have a visualization of what they just talked about. Like, I like Dormammu in the comics, but here, he just feels unnecessary. You could pretty much cut him out and miss nothing. Now, granted, it is impressive that Cumberbatch is both voicing this guy and also doing the motion capture, and is also playing as Strange simultaneously. It's impressive the way that he's playing off himself. But again, you could cut it out and not really miss anything. You still have the same movie. Overall, though, while it does have some learning to do before becoming the true Sorcerer Supreme, because I do think the sequel is better, it does just enough to be an entertaining magical mind screw that does stand out from its mortal brethren. The first Doctor Strange is a fascinating, visually stunning, and surprisingly funny fantasy film that takes the MCU into another realm that was not explored previously. Sure, it's got some pretty big issues, and I wouldn't call it a great movie, and it is a step down from Civil War, but I enjoyed it a lot more this time through. A lot like Thor. Like, first time I watched it, really did not understand what to make of it. And then, now rewatching it as an adult with an analytical mindset, it's definitely helped its case. And because of that, my final verdict for Doctor Strange is going to be a strong, solid, perfectly watchable 7 out of 10. Do I wish I could call it great? Yes, I do, because the visuals are that freaking amazing. But because the villain still sucks, because the story is basic, and because the plot is very predictable, yeah, I can't give it higher than a 7 as much as I want to. And it seems most people are in agreement with me there because it still sits at a 7 out of 10 on IMDb. So, make of that what you will. But overall, this is still a pretty good movie. I can see why my girlfriend really likes it, and it definitely opened my eyes to the British side of media, which I do have to give it credit for. Without this movie and without Benedict Cumberbatch, I probably wouldn't be as invested in the British side of television and film as I am now without it. So, yep. And that's pretty much all I've got. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little extra story I threw into this one. And let me know your thoughts and opinions on the review down below, or on this movie down below. I will be glad to hear any feedback that you have in mind. And stay tuned, because next one we have is a massive fan favorite. At least for most people. There are some people that really don't like it. And it is a movie that, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on. So, I'll see you guys next time for the unhinged, dramatic, chaotic, hilarious insanity that is Thor Ragnarok.